Hey everyone, good Thursday evening to you, and welcome back to Weather for Weather Geeks. As we get set for the weekend, things are going to quiet down weather-wise and start to warm up a little bit over the weekend and into early next week. We still don't see any sort of, crazy 60s or 70s coming our way anytime real soon, but hey, we would take the 40s considering how cold it's been of late, and been that kind of a winter where it just is seeming to drag on forever. We've gotten so used to these mild and relatively snow-free winters of late that the bill is coming due this winter. Now, the official numbers today at the airport as of the climate report at about 5:40, and this is going to be pretty close to, I think, the final number for the day. 1.3 inches worth of snow at the Youngstown Warren Airport. Now, we're going to run a deficit for February, it looks like, and that coincides with the season. I'll show you the seasonal numbers in just a second, but at the airport, 8.6 so far in February. That's almost 2.5 inches behind the average. In terms of where we are for the season, we're running still double-digit deficits here on the order of 10 inches behind average. We're up to 40.3. The seasonal average for the entire season is in the mid-60s. So unless we get a couple of big storms here during the latter stages of the season, chances are we're going to fall a fair amount shy of the average in terms of our seasonal snow, and that's despite a pretty cold winter. So it's been a cold but not particularly productive winter in terms of snowfall. We've gotten nickeled and dimed a lot. There's been no shortage of systems, but we haven't had that one big one just yet this winter. As I mentioned, about 1.5 inches officially at the airport. Some radar estimates here of up to 2 inches or so, pretty common near the state line and heading over into southern Lawrence County. We had some pretty beefy snow showers in this corridor for a while this afternoon. New Middletown, New Springfield, heading down towards East Palestine, and then over towards Elwood City, southern areas of the Newcastle area. Those places did pretty well with some of those heftier lake-enhanced snow showers this afternoon, but all of that is winding down. There's not much more than a few flurries out there as of about 7 o'clock this evening. I mentioned some lake enhancement. I'll show you the Lake Erie ice coverage in just a second. Despite the lake being pretty well covered over, you can still get some enhancement off the lake. But first things first, one of my favorite kind of stats, just random kind of daily stats, is on February the 20th, and it's because of what happened last decade. We had some extremes on today's date in just a few years. Here in 2015, 10 years ago, we had a record low of 16 below on today's date. 3 years later, the record high, 73. So that 89-degree difference between the record low and the record high is the biggest difference on any calendar day between those records. Now, this really stands out because it's really not even close, that difference. And on today's date in particular, before these records were established last decade, the difference between the record low and record high on today's date was only like 70 degrees or something like that. I think the record low was -5 and the record high was 65. So we smashed records on both the high end and the low end last decade on today's date. Now let's talk about the ice coverage on Lake Erie. It's up to about 96%, which is actually a season high. Climatologically speaking, we typically reach our maximum ice coverage on Lake Erie right around Valentine's Day, about a week ago. So we're, behind schedule on that, if you will. And while there are some open pockets on Lake Erie, for, all intents and purposes, it's fairly frozen over, with fairly thick ice in some spots as well. Now, that being said, this is probably right about at peak the next 24 to 36 hours. Once the warm-up starts this weekend, especially with some sunshine, that late February sunshine, which is as strong as it is in mid to late October, this ice coverage will start to definitely change and wane a little bit going forward. So we're at 96% on Lake Erie. The Great Lakes system as a whole, I think I just showed you, was 40-something percent. All of those numbers are probably just about at their peak for the season. All right, so clouds stick around into Friday, just a ho-hum, uneventful winter day on Friday. One more cold day with highs in the lower 20s. We'll do better over the weekend, though, with high pressure building in. Some sunshine for both Saturday and for Sunday as well as this warm front lifts across. So we will get into the mid-30s Sunday, into the lower 40s early next week. 32 on Saturday and 35 is what we're aiming for daytime highs on Sunday. It's nice to have a weekend in late winter that is quiet. There will be no significant weather this weekend. We haven't said that very often this winter. A lot of our impactful weather has decided to occur on weekends, much to the chagrin of someone who works Monday through Friday. My traditional work hours, anyway, Monday through Friday. But as you know, if you've been following me for a while, if the weather's happening on the weekends, then I am not far away from the computer and the phone and the tablet and paying attention to what's going on. In the meantime, today, as expected, the Climate Prediction Center, part of NOAA, did put out their initial March outlook, and this is the temperature map. Now, I oftentimes complain about March being one of my least favorite months because, your expectations get so high. Oh, winter, it's over. It's going to start warming up. And a lot of times March kind of disappoints. That being said, the last 5 Marches have actually been fairly mild. We had a pretty close to average one, I think, 2 years ago. But since 2020, we've had pretty mild Marches. I think this March will be different. Will it be as cold compared to the average as December, January, February? No, I don't think it will be. I think there will be some variation. But it probably will not be as warm as some of our recent Marches. I think the overall temperature trends in March, I took a little bit of a longer look at this today in my long-range analysis. I'm not going to get too much into it on this video because we'd be here all night. But, some of the stuff that's going on in the tropics out in the Pacific, the Indian Ocean, what we call forcing, tropical forcing, convection, thunderstorms in that area, influencing the jet stream over the North Pacific and then North America. A lot of what the modeling is trying to show with that tropical forcing is that there will be a time as we get into mid to late March probably in which that tropical forcing is more favorable for warmth to try to build into the east. So that's a long-winded way of saying that I think March probably starts largely chilly compared to the average with some milder periods here and there. But I think there's a decent chance anyway that we start to turn around the pattern on a more permanent basis during the second half of March. Now that being said, I do agree with what they have drawn here in terms of precipitation. I think it will be an active month. With plenty of precipitation chances across the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley. Now, sometimes that's going to be rain, sometimes that's going to be snow, just depending on the temperatures, but I don't see a shortage of precipitation, which goes along with a La Nina. That map is pretty classic La Nina in the cold weather season, even though we're into meteorological spring in March. It's still the cold weather season, and with La Nina still being fairly stout and still a factor, no surprise to have a wetter than average period in the cold weather season around the Great Lakes. Hope you all have a great night, everyone. Thanks for watching Weather for Weather Geeks this evening. We might take Friday off from this video with not much weather going on from the weekend into next week. We'll make that call tomorrow, but if I don't see you tomorrow, have a great Friday, have a great weekend, and we'll meet back here on Monday.